My name is Josh Rivers. I'm the creator and host of Busy Being Black, which centers and celebrates queer Black stories, experiences, and liveliness. And I'm really honored to be convening this conversation today about the Black radical imagination, one of my favorite topics of all time, something I wax on about ad absurdum, but for good reason. So thank you to Farzana and the team at Healing Justice London and Voices That Shake and all of their comrades and colleagues and accomplices for rehearsing freedoms. We are gonna jump straight into our conversation. We're not doing bios. We're just letting ourselves come. I mean, I did my bio obviously because Oprah would, wouldn't she? Yeah, so we're going to jump straight into the conversation. And I think it would be interesting, though, as we move throughout this conversation to, that question about what do you do is one asinine, if I can use that language here. But it also doesn't tell us much about what our passions are, like where we're moving to, or how we try to make our mark in the world. So I think over the course of this first question I ask you, if you feel compelled and called to tell us how you deliver your message or your work to the world, I think that's a really lovely way to do that. Just one more thing before we begin. We're going to have a conversation for about 45 minutes. We're going to take a comfort break, and then we're going to come back. And for the second part, we want to be in conversation with you all. So the themes today are the Black radical imagination, the future, conflict, embodiment, the erotic ecology, what have you. So please do feel free to feel empowered and encouraged to bring your ideas and questions and thoughts into the space over the course of the evening. So Marai, Yomi, Melz, thank you so much for letting me lead and convene this conversation with you all. I adore each of you so much, so thank you for letting me do this. To open all my conversations on Busy Being Black, I like to ask my guests, how's your heart?
Ancestral greetings, everyone, and thank you, Josh. This is so nice. Isn't it nice? How's my heart? My heart is full, my heart is broken, my heart is joyous, it's strong. There is so much grief. I was talking to Yomi earlier and just saying, I feel like I'm holding so much grief. I feel grief-soaked. And at the same time, my heart is also vibrating with the potency of change and with like particular kind of energies. And like being here is just so nice. Like, it's so delicious, right? So I'm also like I'm full with love. And like you, Black radical imagination, yes, always. And like I consider myself a doula of Black radical imagination. So I'm like, this is like one of my reasons for being, apart from making trouble and time traveling, is to also like support us to birth that imagination. So yeah, my heart is also joyous. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. How are we? You all right? It's a pleasure to be just part of this panel. My heart is, in one sense, there personally, there's a lot of things that's happened within the last 10 days that's been joyous and loving, and with the community around to celebrate with that, it's been amazing, and I'm very thankful. But it's also so conflicted with so much is happening within the world at the moment now. So it's this kind of real juxtaposition where it makes it hard to just be sitting in a specific emotion any given time. Makes it harder to kind of have a conversation with people, to kind of share joyous news when knowing that there's not so much joy happening at the same time, which now means there's a lot of internalizing that happens. And there's a conflict, if I'm to be honest, in relation to what that means for the heart. So it's been quite an emotional discussion with close friends who I can talk to about that, who kind of understand that conversation. So yeah, I don't know how to sit with that at the moment, but I know that within everything that my heart is feeling, there is community, there is support, there is love, there is room to share, there is empathy, there is anger, there is frustration. There's all the makings of what could be a really good book or a film or something along those lines. Do you know what I mean? There's all the makings of all of that. A song, do you know what I mean? Like everyone's talking about the next Adele album. She breaks up with someone, but I'm just like, no, everything Adele's happening in my life right now. So I'm just like, she won't. But I say this to say that, like, with all of that kind of emotions that's happening, it's hard to just place it somewhere because I feel like I can't just pick at it. It's like I'm trying to grab it and it just goes. And this is constantly what's happening with me at the moment. I can't place the emotion. And that's where, yeah. So I don't know if that kind of answers it or not for the most part, but that's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, I hear that deeply. And yeah, equally thank you, Healing Justice London, for inviting me to be here. It's a blessing to be sharing space with you all and you all. And it's just like a seed of joy amongst a rainy, dreary London and a very painful world that we live in. But in terms of where my heart is right now, it just feels deeply present here. And I'll just leave it at that.
I love that question. How's your heart? Isn't it so good? Like me bigging myself up. Well, someone has to. Thank you. Yeah. My heart is good. One of my favorite people on earth is here, Fernando. And so I always feel like I could just burst into a million pieces when he's around. So that makes me feel good. And I feel honored and called, right? I feel like the ancestors are holding me. And I'm a little perplexed. Much to like, to Yomi's point about conflict and conflict feelings, I think Black people are called to perform grief a lot and perform trauma a lot and to extend ourselves kind of unendingly to be available as a receptacle or a target or a mirror to other people's grief. And I think I sometimes feel guilty because I want to hold on to my joy and I want to hold on to my peace even as the world is burning around us, maybe even especially as the world is burning around us. And so that sometimes makes me feel conflicted. So I'm learning from Farzana and other people as well that it's okay, like to feel the conflict and to not know where to place it or how to synthesize it, because that's part of the journey that we're doing together. I do want to talk to you all about conflict, actually, because birthing a new world, ushering in a new way of living, feeling, thinking is going to come with conflict, right? Not only the kind of internalized conflict of living under hegemonic power and white supremacy and whatnot, but I think of ballet dancers or any dancers, right? There's this kind of conflict, supporting me properly, I can do this in a different way, or there's the external conflict from the choreographer, you need to be doing it like this, but it's all towards making something beautiful and athletic and muscular and moving. So I wonder how you think about conflict in the various ways you're trying to make the world a more tender and imaginative place. And I'm leaving that open to whoever wants to jump on that train.
When you say conflict, do you mean the conflicts of the world or conflicts of the imagination? Would you?
I suppose I mean
interpersonal.
Let's bring it to this space, right? We're all coming into the space with different ideas, imaginings, ways of working, ways of feeling, different requirements for our safety, for our accessibility. There's so much difference in this room, right? And as we practice and rehearse, we're going to bump into each other, right? And it's not going to be intentional, but it's going to happen. So there is no safe space, right? So how do we account for, in spaces like this, conflict and rubbing?
Yeah, no, I hear that. So I'm actually writing a book at the moment called, what do I call it? Undisciplined, Reclaiming the Right to Imagine. And basically it explores how the education system curtails our imagination and essentially how to kind of repatriate our imaginations. And in that, I discuss this idea, I call it like an undisciplined scholar, and how to navigate institutional spaces. And so my background is within kind of the academy, and I'm doing a PhD, and like I've been deeply in the world of kind of decolonial education and so on and so forth, but the academy will not have me. I'm leaving soon by the grace of God. But in that space, how do you kind of use the resources that the academy has and use it for, I guess, the betterment of society and community? And one of the things that I say is a part of the undisciplined scholar is this kind of move to really value intention. And so I feel like it's often seen as like intention shouldn't matter. The impact of the action matters the most. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Because to me, intention speaks to the heart. And we're often kind of in this kind of just existing at this material level and existing in this space where we can only kind of argue and disagree or whatever it may be at the level of what we can see and what we can witness. And when I say I'm interested in the heart, that's not a heart that is necessarily like jaded, or a heart that has certainly done work on itself, but like if the intentions of the heart are pure and somebody is doing something in a different way to how I think that it should be done, I think that the best thing to do is to respect that person and allow them to do it and then focus on what you're doing. Because I see sometimes in like movement spaces, it might be like, oh, we should do it like this, or we should do it like this, or we should, and then we end up doing nothing. Do you know what I mean? And how can we kind of move with integrity towards our own hearts and trust that where we're going is what has been placed in our hearts? We don't have to make everyone agree. Do you know what I mean? And how can we do that in, not necessarily in silos, but in harmony, but just not all playing the same song? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, Minister Owusu. Yeah.
I feel like I've consistently going through different forms of conflict over time. So I work with a lot of different organizations. I work part-time with young people and families, whether it's like gang prevention work or drug awareness work, and I've been doing this since I was 16. I'm not 16 anymore. But even in that situation, in working, just to give you an example of conflict, in trying to work with a group of young people, and there is a gang of other kids looking for this one particular kid, I got attacked and part of that process in terms of what that work is particularly trying to do, rush to hospital, all that stuff, and blah, 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 blah. So when I think about conflict, I'm thinking about in that idea of trying to work towards a specific change, what ramification comes for self as part of that process in going for that. So even now as a writer and in spoken word and poetry, and I host different nights and I read poems at a poetry night, and there's one person, there was two different occasions when like two white men didn't particularly agree with what I was saying. They waited for me outside of the show. So the show was finished and they were waiting to discuss this matter of this poem with me. And in saying that, I don't not necessarily know who here would have protected me or be ready to be there for me, but I know that in writing this poem, not everybody's necessarily going to agree with it. I feel like, even though I feel like not everyone's going to agree with it, my last thing is, someone's going to wait for you after you finish this poem to want to discuss this with you. And if you get into an argument, it can actually go left. There's no security, it's a poetry gig. So it's like, so what's the next move? But that intention and that kind of thinking about conflict is, X is gonna try to really be a bully, thinking that you're just a poet, not knowing that you was really born in South London, like raised in South, and then they're gonna get a real quick reminder that you just can't talk to me in the way that you think, what you think you're about to do is not gonna happen. And that's conflict in a creative way. Do you see what I mean? So I feel like there's different forms of conflict in which I am coming across, that I'm going to consistently face, knowing the work I do. And it's the idea of knowing, I don't know, I might say something that might upset someone here and don't know what that kind of conflict is going to be like, but I have to ready the body for it because this is what the work calls for, essentially. So.
Okay, so I'm going to time travel because that's just necessary. So I'm going to go to the space of my DNA and speak about the conflict in the DNA that is Marai Larasi's body. So one of the things that is true is I am actually a product of colonization. And so for those who don't know but should know, there was this thing that happened, which is African people were trafficked across the Atlantic to a range of places, but to the Caribbean. And so I emerge from the blood of people that were trafficked and also from the blood of people that did the trafficking. There's an inherent conflict, like literally built into my DNA. And so there's something for me around practicing being at ease. To not be at ease with conflict is to not be at ease with myself. What is problematic for me is power over. Because that's the bit, like conflict for me is like we're figuring shit out together. We're like doing that. We're bouncing around. We're going, okay, why are you doing that? No, I'm not feeling that, whatever. And we do that, it's important to do that when we think about what sort of future that we're imagining. Because if we are creating a future, this space of collective liberation where we are carbon copies of each other or like cutouts of each other, it's usually ableist, it's usually white supremacist, it's all of these things. We are supposed to, like when we talk about black future, it is so black liberation, it's so often an ableist black liberation, right? Like there's all of those things. It's so often not particularly queer. It's like, so there is something for me around we have to build conflict into our movement spaces because we have to develop the robustness around holding difference. When you want to come and tell me how I need to be now and you're exercising power over, that's not conflict, that's oppression. That's a different kind of thing. And that's when we are in the kind of situation that we are seeing across the planet right now. Because people keep calling things conflict when actually what it is, it's oppression, or as Rasta would say, it's downpression, it's supremacy, it's usually white supremacy, it's a whole other form, all these different forms of supremacy. That's a different, so we need to name and be really clear what the thing is, because conflict in and of itself is a requirement of human existence. Oppression isn't. Yeah?
And I think of conflict, I was thinking of how much I love a good tussle. I'd love a good fight. I love a good argument, right? And you're not listening to me, I need you to hear this, and that there so often in my life that, and I think for many black people, that an expression of anger where the voice is raised and the shoulders are back, you can't be like that. That's not an effective way to communicate how you're feeling, right? And so this conflict is also then prevented that way too. I think about my mom, right? She can't stand it when I yell, and she thinks it's a problem. And I'm like, I always do this when I'm excited about Beyonce or I'm mad at you. Like I elevate myself. And so there's that policing, I think, and I think that's why I'm curious about conflict as well, because I do find it to be a constitutive part of us trying to get somewhere together. And I think if we're skipping down the road together all the time, it's unrealistic, right? We got to take those white supremacist rose-colored glasses off, as fabulous as they can be.
Yeah, I do feel like, and thank you for that, because I do feel also like who gets to be in conflict and who gets to be in the fullness of self-expression. Right, and the black body just doesn't have the same space to be in the rage or to be in the I don't feel good. Like my hair is often wrapped. I've got long dreadlocks. So I'm like, people see me coming and I'm immediately angry. And for the first few years of my work, I'd be like, going, maybe I should like explain to people that are not angry. And now I'm like, why aren't you angry? There is shit to be angry about. Be angry. And of course I am angry. I am an angry black woman, yes.
Yes.
Right? Like that's part of, because like the world is burning. Why would you not be angry? What's up with you? Like, so, and again, like so often, like women, femmes will come to me trying to hold, like, how do I deal with this in my workplace or in this community space where I'm not allowed to even, like, say I've got a feeling, because the moment I say that, it's framed as anger and then I'm shut down. I don't get to cry, I don't get to have my humanity, etc.
Yeah. Melz, you're writing a book about repatriating the imagination.
Maybe that's not the word, because
No.
I'm not patriot, but you know what I mean.
I'm going to say re-inhabiting our imagination. Inhabiting our
Re-embodying.
And the playground of the mind. And I think we've spoken about this before offline, but how many of you are familiar with the work of Walter Brueggemann? Oh my gosh, okay. Reading list immediately. The prophetic imagination. So in 1978, Walter Brueggemann writes The Prophetic Imagination, and he is looking across history, in biblical history, to evidence the way that the prophets within the Bible were calling attention to the ways that the imagination of the people being oppressed was necessarily limited, defanged, denuded, like made dull, because the people in power, the kings, can't have you out here imagining better futures. It needs to the imagination can only be what the king says the imagination can be. And so Walter Brueggemann is saying, like, the poet is the prophet, the activist is the prophet. We're supposed to awaken and reactivate people to let them know that there is this bountiful imagination that is possible, that what's being told to us from on high is unlikely all there is, right? And so in thinking about you re-inhabiting or calling us to re-inhabit our imaginations, who's keeping you awake? Who's provoking you to think more beautifully about your imagination?
Do you know what you just said, and I'll come back to it, but it just made me think of, actually, you know what, yeah, no cap, I'm just going to be like myself. And
have
I
you
say
been?
that, I say that, yeah, because I'm interested in, most of my research at the moment is about epistemology, which is knowledge, how is knowledge created, validated, and justified. And I feel like, so in the book as well, I'm just giving you the whole book. Y'all better buy the book when it comes. But I kind of offer this notion of trans epistemology, and I'm a trans person, and it kind of comes from Patricia Hill Collins's work on standpoint epistemology. I actually met with Patricia Hill Collins in Cambridge on Monday, which was sick. But essentially, standpoint epistemology is where this incredible black feminist thinker, Patricia Hill Collins, discusses how black women are able to create a different form of knowledge from that particular standpoint of being black women. And so for me though, trans epistemology is like, transness to me is like, it's obviously like, I can't even talk about how hard it is being trans, but we talk about that so much, yeah. I genuinely think it's like the sickest thing ever. Like, how is it that a person can come into this world and every single day they're told that they're this? Like, even before you can verbalize anything, before you have any kind of consciousness, you're just a blob, you're just in the belly, and you're like, that's what you're gonna be, that's who you are. Every single day you're told that. Every single day the world messages to you, you're this, you're this, you're this. And then to find somewhere within yourself to be like, actually, no, I'm not that. And then to go on the journey of becoming who you are, like, that shit is crazy. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we sleep on it. And so to me, that kind of demonstrates, like, there's so much expansiveness within our interior worlds. And I feel like trans people offer a lens to kind of explore the fact that we are more than just matter. We are more than just, like, our bodies in the world. And going deeply inward and finding like who we truly are and then expressing that in the world, like, to me is again, like imagination, innit? Because you have to imagine like something that we're taught is impossible. Like you have to be like, yo, I don't care what science says, I don't care what the world says. I'm gonna imagine this impossibility, and then I'm gonna go and live that out. So yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
there was a festival last month called Africa Rights, and I was one of 6 curators, and they asked me if I would like to what I would like to curate as part of the festival, and there was a workshop with the wonderful Timmy Wilkie. She's incredible, but the workshop was called Terms and Unconditions, and it's the idea that culturally, from like kind of African spaces or just generally any kind of cultural space, you're kind of born. And there are terms before you've even entered this world, in terms of just like, this is the rules, this is what you're going to follow. And for most part, as you're growing up, you kind of follow these terms, just thinking that this is just what it is, this is what goes on. And then at some point, you start realizing, actually, these terms are kind of bullshit. These terms, they're a bit off. I don't necessarily agree with these terms. And then at some point, there's like, almost like a light bulb or something that happens where you're just like, actually, I don't like these terms. I don't like these terms. I'm gonna now I'm gonna create my own terms, and that's where that kind of title took. So for me, I always wonder where does it stop for folks in terms of what the terms were initially, and when they decided to like kind of strip that conditioning to be like, actually, nah, these I'm not going by these no more. And specifically within that session itself, it was within a group of Black British folks within that space to have that discussion, and it was a real revelation for some, because they're like, I've been working along these terms for the longest time without ever thinking that I could break it on my own autonomy at any given point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So maybe another way into this question about what keeps us awake or reawakens us. I'm curious about it because I don't think that we break free or begin writing our own terms and conditions, and that's it, it's a straight line forward, right? That we have to keep being provoked and prodded and reminded of who we are and what we're capable of, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at, right? So you've touched on the magic, right? The magic of that, the magic of the potential of the trans experience, right? That there's some sort of information and some wisdom in that imaginative journey. And you're talking about it kind of emerging and these groups of people kind of questioning themselves. Marai, how would you say that, how do we keep ourselves awake and provoked?
So my son is in the space over there. He's a poet. And I have two adult children, and just to say we engage in a lot of linguistic resistance. Like, words matter to us. Like, we unpack every single word, like literally as part of thinking about, I think, what we're absorbing into our bodies all the time and what we're saying. And there is something about that, like, deep intention. So there's something about like who we're surrounded with. Like, for me, who I'm surrounded with, how I play. Like, we do a lot of wordplay as a family, so we're always just like one of us could head down like a whole trajectory of, like, the other day I was on the word vandalism. Who were the vandals? Where did that come from? Ah, shit, okay. Or like discipline, like this word that stresses me out, and then I'm like, yo, but this really means, what am I a disciple to? So then if I check it like, what am I a disciple to, then like what it does is it's calling me into accountability. This is not necessarily this oppressive thing, right? And so there's something around like what we do in our own minds, what we do in our own consciousness, but how are we in community? Like, I stay alert in community. I stay awake in community. I also stay awake in prayer. Like, so for me, spirit, my spiritual practices, like, are the ways like that I am like, I'm opening to spirit all the time. I'm calling my ancestors in all the time. I'm moving with them. I am like kneeling down in prayer. When shit goes crazy, I am like face down, like, okay, please open this space up for me. So like, for me, the practice, how, like, just to give big shout out to Healing Justice London for creating space for many of us to be in somatic practice, because that also has done very specific things for me in terms of like staying with it. And then, you know, I'm always here for the plants. I'm always here for the medicine. Like, I'm always here for like, what are the different ways that we can engage with nature to also hold us to account. I'm like it's a bit Malcolm X with me. Any means necessary. Yeah. Like straight up, like whatever, because each person will have their thing, and for me, community does it. But spirit, prayer, like writing, arguing with myself, like all of. I've got a Gemini rising. It's complicated. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a lot, right? But also like there is something for me about accountability. So I'm always in the conversation of what am I in service to, and that keeps me sharp. Yeah.
No, I was thinking accountable to our imagination, but I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense if I say that? Are we accountable to our imaginations?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what am I a disciple to? Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. I hope it's not boring for you guys, but what am I disciple to? What's my duty is how I would, and what duty do I have to my imagination? And if I'm in community with people, then I think my beard is itching my nose. Sorry, I'm not picking my nose, guys. Welcome to the club, Melz. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Tell me you have ADD without telling me. Yeah. I wanted. Yeah. I want us to talk about pain, but not because I'm, a sadist, but because I think that we can be forgiven for living in ways that move us away from pain. But I don't think that an absence of pain necessarily means joy and happiness is there. And I think in each of our experiences, there might be some indication that we can understand pain as a kind of intelligence. How might you respond to that?
Go ahead. If you've got something to say, please.
Oh man, where to even start? I don't think I'm going to be long because I'm sure that folks have something to share with that. Especially from a writing perspective, it's like in the process of this book especially, it's almost like I'm living and reliving this every single day. And then you have to go through edits, and then you have to kind of live through the thoughts of it while the world is still happening at the same time. So it's not just as simple as just writing something down and then going to bed and waking up. It's almost like to live through a process every day. I think one of the things that's most painful for me sometimes is, and it goes back to I think it was the first proper question I was discussing, is some days I just want to wake up and just be. Leave my house, just be. Do you see what I mean? Without the idea of some kind of violence coming my way, shape or form. And just knowing that I'm preparing my body for some kind of something coming from somewhere, it hurts every time. Like it's so that just the idea, the concept of that. Just earlier before y'all came in, I was talking about I was at dinner with a friend a couple of years back, and was just talking about life and everything. And she said, "Oh, she's gonna quit her job. She's gonna quit the job." And I said, "So what are you gonna do?" She's like, "I'm gonna travel." I'm like, "Huh? You can do that? Like that's a you can actually. I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna explore the world." White colleague, she just said it. And she looked at me and I was shocked. She was like, "Why you look so shocked?" I'm like, "Because I was never given that as an option from my parents. There was always a pressure to, you come in, you get into England, you work, you get your studies done, do this job. There's almost no rest in it. And you're telling me you're gonna quit your job and you're just gonna travel and live life." And that, I think to that, and there's pain in not having to live and just enjoy in the same way someone else would, if you know what I mean. So for me, the idea of just being is a beautiful thing to me. But then I hear the points that you made earlier in terms of just like sometimes when we talk about conflict, part of this calls for this is just my role, and this is something I just have to be comfortable with in terms of how my day to day is going to be, or does it have to be that?
Well, so I've got two things to say to that. The first is that question came to me at the. Oh yeah. Also, great. Also, Fazana, if they want to ask questions as part of the second half, okay, fabulous. Look at me, Farzana. Are you doing your job? Yeah. So there's two things to say, Yomi. The first is that question emerged while I was reading Mannerism. You know, at the very beginning, you're talking about this journey, and you're questioning this journey that I don't want to spoil it for you, get Mannerism, but that this journey that our ancestors were forcibly taken on. And to your point about this, our DNA being inflected, braided with this type of pain. My second point is then, if there is that anticipation of the pain, how does that alter or augment the imagination? Like, what is how does that change what you dream of?
No.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
I can wait.
If you're going to respond to that.
Yeah. Yes. So I want to come at this from the perspective and I'm going to speak about violence, and I just want to, just in terms of asking people to take care of themselves. So I'm a survivor of multiple forms of violence, and that's kind of at the macro, but there's also violence at the interpersonal level. And I said this at the kind of the last HJL Imagination event that I spoke at. Like, there is one of the ways that I entered the practice of imagination was actually in experiences of violence, as in the ways that I took myself out and the way that I fled. So I want to speak, like, that's a deeply personal thing, but there is something around marinage, as we would call it, like flight, and the transgressive, the ways that we can transgress, the ways that we can respond to experiences of pain through imagination. So this is not to valorize pain. Yeah, I just want to say that, or to valorize violence. But there is something, what I always want to bring us back to is when we are told that the ways that we respond to pain are not credible as imagination because they didn't emerge in joy, or they didn't emerge in a fluffy environment with flowers, or whatever. There is something around pushing back and being able to say, my imagination, whether it emerges in moments of pain or whether it emerges in moments of, you know, kind of ecstasy or whatever, is my imagination. And some of the most potent things, like, I am here in this work through that pain. Yeah, I am here. So much of, like, I'm part of a really beautiful collective called Project Talawa, and one of the things that when people ask us how we ended up in that kind of place of this radical black feminist organizing, one of the first things that we say is a grief. Like, we came with the, like, oh, we want to be there, but we also came with the, that felt shit. And out of the shit, we were like, how do we imagine and then lift and build ourselves out of that?
Yes.
Yeah?
Right, because, sorry to interrupt.
No, we go.
We see this in society, right? Like, we see that we see this in the society that we live in, right? When harm is caused, it's very much about addressing that individual harm with some sort of punitive punishment, and it doesn't also include rethinking about the world that we live in to make sure that pain doesn't happen again, right? So in that sense, the pain is not utilized as an intelligence, right? It's used as an indication for further punishment for someone, right? And there's no actual resolution in that, right? It's just this constant cycle of actually looking backwards, retroactively punishing someone for something in the past, and not actually looking ahead and saying, well, what can we create?
Absolutely. And what are our movements if not a product of the imagination born out of injustice? Like, that's what our movements are, right? Like, you know, I come from Black feminist movement building, and like that, it's not the imagination wasn't created in fluffiness. Like there is fluffy, but the imagination is also created in shit feels real. And actually in that, what do we like, how do we imagine ourselves out of it? Not just how do we like react, but how do we like, what are we creating? What are the alternative realities that we are dreaming and building and saying, okay, this is this, I'm gonna put my life on the line for this. Like that's my experience of imagination, right? And the relationship with pain.
Yeah, nah, beautiful, powerful. Deeply resonate. And I just wanted to take it from a slightly different angle. And mention like when we're speaking about discipline. I love that disciple thing. I'm a thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. But yeah, amen to that. But maybe it's my Capricorn moon, yeah. But me, I love discipline.
I'm a Capricorn moon as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
See,
Fifth house.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I love discipline, and I feel like in a lot of ways, I tried to abandon that part of me because it wasn't really cool, innit? Like, why? Do you know what I mean? But over the past few years, I've been leaning into it a lot more deeply. And I guess going back to the question you asked me before, like, who's inspiring me? To be honest, at the moment, it's probably not the people that you would expect, because I made a decision maybe back in like 2021 or something to just literally read everything. If I'm slightly curious about something, I'm gonna read that book. And it's led me to reading these mad books, yeah. But some of them have honestly taught me a lot. And one of them is Marcus Aurelius, the Meditations. And Marcus Aurelius was like a Roman emperor, and he was like just basically reflecting on his life. And Stoicism's given a bad name because it's all about like discipline, etc., etc. But that is beautiful. There's this line in it that he has is like, the only thing we have to do in life is recognize the power within us and worship it sincerely. And I genuinely believe that is true. And if we are to worship that power that is inside of us, that requires discipline. Like, it requires discipline to hold a flame of hope. I think Mariam Kaba says that, innit? Hope is a discipline. Everything is a discipline. Imagination is a discipline. Like, and when we talk about pain, I feel like we can often either take, I guess, how can I even put it? Like a pain that just comes to us, or a pain we create. And so I would prefer the pain that I create. Like, I'd prefer to go to the gym, do you know what I mean? And try to get like Josh, you get it? Like, and that's a pain I create, do you know what I mean? In terms of like, if I'm in a situation in life and I'm in like a bad relationship or something, I can either choose the pain of leaving a relationship or the pain of being single, do you know? Either the pain of leaving a relationship. What's the other pain? Because that staying in it, yeah. Do you know what? Because that's so far out of my consciousness now. Yeah, or the pain of staying in it. Do you know what I mean? I can choose the pain of confronting the life that has been given to me, or I can choose the pain of numbing it through alcohol or drugs, etc. In it, both of them are pain. Do you know what I mean? It's either I'm gonna take that pain immediately, or I'm gonna take it later. And the same thing comes with imagination, innit? Like, I need to deeply hold that flame of hope within me, even though I see desolation all around me. I need to deeply hold that and trust that a different possibility is true. And a lot of this as well comes from, like, I read a lot of spiritual books, like deeply inspired by like Eckhart Tolle, Gary Zukav, Alan Watts, like so many different incredible like spiritual teachers from around the world. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the ancient Vedic texts, and Sobonfu Some is like the Garan spiritual teacher, and so much of it comes back to like being able to be present with like our present moment, innit? And being able to navigate life through the lens of the presence. But I've forgotten what I was gonna say at the start. Like, I can't remember where I started, but basically, yeah.
Yeah. I think you got where you needed to go, for sure. Another one for you, Andreas Weber, for your reading list. Yes? Yeah, Andreas Weber and Erotic Ecology. And for those who aren't familiar with an erotic ecology or Andreas Weber, he's a biological philosopher. And he's saying that far from the kind of causal mechanistic Darwinistic thrust of life that actually are down to our individual cells. They're motivated by a feeling. They want to touch and be transformed, and they don't always know what they're going to be transformed into, but the motivation to transform is there. And so we can better understand that as an erotic relationship. The sea is in an erotic relationship with the moon, right? Like the tide and the moon are interacting. And I think it's a beautiful way to think about ourselves and embodying the imagination and bringing these highfalutin ideas like into the world. And so maybe, Marai, I will start with you as a doula of the imagination. I'd like to segue into pleasure, right? How are you holding space? How have you learned to hold space for pleasure, maybe especially when you feel you don't deserve it or when you feel someone else doesn't deserve it?
I love this question. So I was somewhere the other day and with some young folk, and they decided, they went on a kind of bit of road trip, and then they were telling me about it, and they were like, and we were paying Pony. Genuine Pony, anybody remember? Oh. Okay. Which is, so I'm going to start with that as an entry point into,
yeah,
right?
I see where this is going.
Like my partner often speaks about the sacred and the profane. Yeah, and I think that there's something around how we hold mischief and like a bit of rudeness. Like for me, it's in hip hop, it's in dancehall, it's in like it's in how we play, it's in how we move our bodies. Like for me, like I love a good wine. I love wine up myself and carry on. And my children get embarrassed, but like, because for me there is something about like being in my body, like being in my skin, like feeling my skin as nice. Yeah, you know, like the time I spend in the shower, the relationship I have with my skin, like this flesh, like honoring this flesh. Like, so whatever, for me, it's mischief and naughtiness and a lot of dodgy hip hop. And even when I know I shouldn't, like I'm like, oh God, they never did just say that. Lord, please, why did I listen to that song 20 years ago and think that was a jam, but it still is a jam and I really shouldn't. Like it's that, right? And so like for me there's mixing it up and mixing it up and living that in my skin. You know, like allowing myself to be. And there is another side of pleasure which is, and I love that you've brought this in because it really makes me think of Audre Lorde, is like how we are again. I'm going to bring it back to community, like what brings me joy, like good food, like a nice Saturday soup, or like a nice pot or plate of my daughter-in-law's jollof, where I'm like, yes, like those kind of things, like allowing myself the pleasure of taste. Right, like all of my senses coming alive, that for me connects me to like I'm whole, and therefore that's part of how I imagine my future. Because I imagine my future with this black feminist joy. I imagine my future where we're able to eat together, where we're able to move together. I imagine a future where we are dancing and winding up and carrying on bad. I imagine soca in the future. I imagine Afrobeats in the future. I imagine dancehall in the future. I imagine hip hop, like all of that. Right, so for me, it's like there, and it's also bringing that into the now all the time.
It's everything you said, but I'm like, I will put some grime in there though. Yes. I'll definitely add some grime in there though, I think for sure. You know, I really miss being around my boys and seeing them laugh. I miss a kind of pure laughter that I feel like I haven't heard in a long time. And there's something about sitting, they can be chatting shit all day, man, but it's just something about just sitting back. And there's a moment where, I don't know if you ever have these moments with friends where you just sit back and you just watch all the foolishness they get on with. But you just appreciate the space that you're in, and you're just like, I'm really thankful for you. I'm really thankful for you. I'm really thankful for you. Then they'll look at you like you're the weirdo. They don't know what's going on. But they're like, it's none of your business what's going on in my head right now. But there are points in which I miss that because, and then immediately I'm reminded of how lonely this life can be sometimes, and how much time can go past on your own, even though you feel like you're connecting with people, but WhatsApp is not enough, and IG and socials is not enough. But when you're in the physical, the immediate thing that comes to me is like, why don't I do more of this all the time, right? So I think to that kind of pleasure, that I really miss the idea of just being lost in just nonsense conversations, laughter, and a type of joy that will make me not want to wrap up this gathering tonight, this evening, because there's actual power in that kind of gathering. There's power, and it's almost like a refueling that happens where you might have felt a certain way, but then after you leave, whether it's going for dinner or just catching up, you can feel it as you left. You didn't. This different way that you walked in, that you walk out, type thing. So for me, that type of pleasure, I really long for it sometimes, you know.
And I think maybe I was projecting a little bit by saying, especially when you feel like you don't deserve it, or when someone else doesn't deserve it, like, because I think I withhold pleasure for myself quite often, right? Whether it's, you mentioned going to the gym, whether it's the body dysmorphia telling me I can't have that delicious thing I want, or it's an interaction I keep myself from myself, isolate that, and I have to remind myself that I deserve to feel good, right? That I deserve to hear my friends laugh, or go to Kew Gardens with Fernando and talk about misogyny in the woods, like nerd. But like there are these joys and these pleasures that I have to be reminded of, to allow myself to enjoy.
Just a super quick one. My mentor, she whenever she has an achievement, she treats herself to like a silver kind of bangle or bracelet type thing. And I didn't know this. And she was just like, for every achievement, you should actually treat yourself to something. Whether it's taking yourself out to dinner, whether you're buying yourself some wine or whatever it is, or whether you buy yourself a piece of jewelry. And for her, it was like just a bracelet or bangle here. When I told you, she's up to here. So, and then I'm like, wow, so that's da. So then in my head, I'm just like, look how much you celebrate yourself on your arm. So every time you walk outside and people see you, they just think that you're collecting like bracelets and bangles. They don't know that there's a deeper meaning, however small or however big. It's up to here in terms of how you celebrate yourself. And she just won an award last month, so I don't even want to tell you what kind of thing she's going to get. She might be running out of one arm now she's going to the other. But it's just a note to just be like, however small, just when you know that you've done something as a way of pleasure for yourself, treat yourself. Don't wait for other people to kind of congratulate you. Congratulate yourself and then consider what that feels like for the self. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, 100. And for me, I feel like I was thinking about like Chinese Taoism, and again, like Taoism, another philosophy that I feel deeply inspired by. And the Tao is everything. And so the only reason that we know pleasure is because we've known pain. The only reason that we can know pain is if we know pleasure as well, innit? And so the both and. And so for me, I'm like, when it comes to, maybe it's our Capricorn moons, because I can restrict myself sometimes, but
I have a Capricorn stellium.
Oh, is it?
So if we're
I've
talking
got
about
stellium as well.
if we're talking about
do you know what?
Twinsies, yeah.
Yeah, group
Sorry.
therapy, guys.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
we need help. Yeah, the bondage.
But I feel like there's that kind of deeper level of things as well. Like when it comes, because I feel like Capricorn, it's the devil card in tarot. And so it's either a deep restriction or hedonism. Do you know what I mean? And so, and that neither are good. Do you know what I mean? Neither are good. It's all about balance. And for me right now, it's about finding that balance and being able to have that both and, like in the Tao. And then even thinking about, I guess, the erotic, and like the erotic is many things. But when I think of the erotic, I think of desire. And I think of the desire for like a new world. Like Audrey Lorde actually even says like the erotic exists on like a spiritual plane for her. And she's like, there's no difference between moving into the arms of a lover and writing a beautiful poem. Do you know what I mean? And it makes me think like, to write that poem though, that requires discipline. Do you know what I mean? In order to do those things, or in order to hold a love. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been thinking about love a lot. I'm writing about it at the end of my book actually. And in order to love, we have to deeply know. In order to love, in order to have that pleasure, like, it's discipline. It's real discipline. It's real growth. And I feel like it all comes back to, like, our own concept of ourselves. Like, if I go towards pleasure and I actually don't love myself, or I don't think highly of myself, I'm going to go towards pleasures that are actually corrupting me. I'm going to go towards the things that are going to cause me pain in the long run. But if I work on that and grow to love myself deeply, then I can trust myself more in the pleasures that I go after, not get trapped in that Capricorn hedonistic kind of vibe. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I've just gone, but...
Can I jump in? Oh, I love that so much. Thank you. I want to speak a little bit about desire. And, like, one of the things I'm obsessed with is how do we decolonize desire, right? And I say this because one of the spaces that goes one of the spaces that isn't necessarily attended to particularly well in our decolonial practice is, like, what did colonization do to us in terms of desire? Who do we desire? What do we desire? How do we desire? How has that framed us, right? So for me, part of the imagination is the time travel around desire, right? So, like, how do I take myself to a place where I'm like, what shows up for me and how is that linked to this colonial legacy, and how do I unpack that for myself in order to give myself the freedom to be in the space of my desire in the most liberatory way? Yeah? Which is, am I allowed to swear? It's a head fuck. But if I'm not, am I allowed to swear? Like, it is, like there's a way that can be like a bit of a loop, but feels so important in terms of a reclaim of body and a reclaim of the erotic imagination. Because the erotic imagination is often dominated by the colonial frameworks that actually tell us how we should be, what the manifestation of that. And sometimes actually it can be a bit of a trick that we're trying to figure out, how do I get out of that? So for me, that's also part of the imagination.
Yeah, we're being told what we want, but not by us. Who said this earlier? Teaching myself out of myself? Yeah, okay. So it's time for a comfort break. Please, let's snap or put our hands together or cheer or woo, woo! But we'd love to start the second part of this conversation. We have a question from our audience on YouTube, but I think it would be put my teeth in. I think it would be nice to re-enter into this space with some poetry. So, Yomi or Marai? I'll choose. Marai.
So one of the things, my son, who's a poet, is here, as I said. So I don't spend a lot of time with my poetry, as much time as I should. But this piece I've performed a couple of times before. It's called Intersectional Alchemy. I was born of a black pearl somewhere in the east of London. As a Leo with Gemini rising and Scorpio moon divining, I arrived willfully and disrespectfully to a hospital in the middle of a semi-concrete jungle in this displacement them call England. On a night pretending to be summer, I emerged at the intersection of time and space, earth and sky, and pushed through rain clouds naked but fully warmed by memories of sun rays and safely swaddled by mooncloth dipped in Atlantic Ocean waters. I was baptized in the air of my ancestors' breath and the pools of my mother's frustrations. And like many of us, I was forged in the fires that burn when continents collide in our blood cells. Africa, Africa, Africa. Europe, fragments of Asia, islands thrust together, tectonic plates of empire shifting gears as I howled my way into this. I want to believe that the goddesses smiled on that July night as I took my first breaths, that they saw me as their own sacred handiwork, molded from material they had fashioned over centuries, whirling and whispering, Ashe. But who knows? I was raised close to the sky in Jamaican mountains, on love and rage mixed with yellow yam and Julie mangoes, root and fruit, spirit squeezed in flour bag cloth, pounded like cassava, blended with fire and water, like Christmas sorrel steeped in sugar, ginger and white rum. Not for the self-righteous. I was taught to spiral through any mist, let the fragrance of my soul rise free like morning coffee, strong, rich and touched with liquor salt, mix up and blend up. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Silence. Memories and visions woven with golden thread, soaked in drying blood, liberation's tears. When, you see, to be the being at the intersection of enslaved and overseer, of Mama Yemaya and a virgin named Mary, of Papa Legba and a messed up fallen angel, of rice and peas, curried goat and roast potatoes, could simply be seen only ever as a fuckery of forced hybridity that comes with a ship, a whip and a book they call God's word. For my own sanity, I chose to transmute the fuckery through and to alchemy, intersectional alchemy. Check it. Black woman magic theory, black community diversity, black dyke witchery, black queer imagery, black moon divinity, black sun wizardry, black earth chemistry, black soil fertility, black soul creativity, black folk artistry, black linguistic versatility, black memory nobility, black herstory legality, black intellectual technology, black radical theology, black educational philosophy, black emancipation psychology, black liberation strategy, black love capacity, black vision mystery, black future ancestry, black life infinity, black collective mystical magical mercurial 7-generational cosmology, black, 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 intersectional alchemy. Ashe.
That was incredible. Yeah, just to take a breath, right? This is wicked. Oh, so some love for our BSO interpreters as well. Like, big up yourselves. Thank you so much. So this poem, thank you for that share, man. This poem is titled Anethia, and just some context. So I came across this term, I'm not sure if anyone's heard of it. It's called depretomania. And it's a term well, it's so tough to discuss this term because it basically what the term was for enslaved Africans, the idea of them wanting to escape from slavery, it was termed as a mental illness. This is what this was, right? So the idea of them wanting to escape this, it was deemed as you have to be mentally ill to kind of consider the idea of escaping from such a situation and wanting to just get away from there. And that was it. And I'm just like, what? That was my initial response. It's wild to consider that this word was created for that. And my immediate response was, if you can create a word for something like that, then I'm gonna create my own. And I'm gonna create my own to explain a feeling that I can't put into words, but I'm sure everybody to a certain degree can align themselves with this feeling. And so Anethia was born. And it's the idea that you live life up until a certain point in your age, and when you reach about 9 or 11, a specific type of fear, you're struck with it. And when that happens, the shell in your body kind of cracks and it lets out this toxin, and it's with you for the rest of your life. You can't unsee it. When you're met with a certain type of fear, that's it. Up until that point, it happens, and you just can't reverse it. And that's deeped into like theories of weathering, and I can go on in terms of what this is, especially to the black body. So just some context to the poem itself. Anethia. Anethiitis, The release of the enethiotoxin into the bloodstream, announced by sound similar to that of knuckles quietly cracking. It is generally first triggered between the ages of 9 and 11 and continues thereafter into adulthood and old age. It is known to occur in heightened levels in black people as a result of inherited trauma and weathering carried down the generations. Anethia in relation to power, racism, and police. Recent high-profile deaths in the UK and US have prompted increased study into the hypotheses that anethia is produced in the body when black people are confronted by law enforcement and white people bearing firearms. As far back as the 17th century, records of those murdered as a result of these interactions have described symptoms consistent of elevated levels of anethia, both among the incarcerated and in the civilian population. Contemporary studies suggest a strong causal link with the thought of imminent death. A recent example shows a 10-year-old black boy pausing his game of basketball to hide behind his parents' truck until the police car had driven by. Anethia in relation to white people. While numerous studies have sought to verify the belief that anethia occurs only in black people, traces of a similar toxin have been identified in white subjects. Minor behavior symptoms of the toxin's presence include a clutching of handbags and a crossing of roads. Extreme symptoms may extend to shooting unarmed black people or calling the police, often after the physicality and the movements of black people have been misread as threatening and or intimidating. This can also result in the murder of black people. Anethia in relation to ancestry. Secrets often carry through generations. As universal as this phenomenon may occur in all racial and ethnic backgrounds, studies show that the levels differ dramatically when it comes to black people. Dr. Senor Erife, YGLT ONS, notes the following in his recent book, Anethia, From the Cradle to the Grave. White families tend to spill their tea so freely that their gardens become soft, limp, and infested with root rot. This is not the case in black families. It's as if the ground beneath their feet struggles to flower, and when it does, it dries up and dies.
I'll take it.
I'm so used to
Thank you so much for sharing yourselves and your poetry with us. I'm sure you all know this, but in case you don't, one of the fascinating things about poetry for me is that it lights up the same areas of the brain as music. Right? We're designed to respond to music and poetry in the same way. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing for us to reflect on as well. So we have some time for dialogue and discussion. On YouTube, Eva asks how we think about success through the lens of the Black radical imagination.
I'll begin. That's an interesting question because I feel like success is such a loaded term. And I feel like something that I'm thinking through a lot is the idea that it's not necessarily something that we're going towards. And I guess it kind of collapses the idea of like time and temporality. Like, what if we look at the radical Black imagination as something that is deeply present because it's in our imaginations? And so I guess the kind of linear way to look at it would be success is when we achieve X, Y, Z, innit? But just the ability of us to imagine, to me, is success. Like, the imagination isn't just like this kind of fanciful thing that exists in our mind. It's power, it's truth, like just by there. And I often think about like during the days of like colonization or like slavery or whatever it may have been, like the Black people that were imagining that one day it would end, and like the level of resistance that one had to hold in order to even hold the flame of hope, even like being in prison and being there for a life sentence or whatever it may be, like in order to continue each day, like there is resistance, is deep resistance. And so I feel like holding the fact that in order for us to be able to even imagine something else is possible is success in and of itself.
I have a hunch I know who this Eva is, and so I'm gonna keep coming at this question because I think I might understand what she's trying to get. So towards the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about conflict in this space together, and these movements together, and these desires that we're sharing to move towards something, as Reverend Angel Kyoto would call, more whole, more just, more spacious for all of us. How are we agreeing on success, on metrics of success? Like how do we do that together, and what do we learn from the Black radical imagination about how we reach those agreements?
I suppose that's why this kind of discussion is really important in terms of how ways to get to that. I watched a play earlier this year called Tambon Bones. I don't know if anyone saw that at all. That Tambon Bones was in Stratford. And essentially what it was asking of Black creatives is you create this piece of work that is touching on basically everything that we're doing right now, that's touching on all of these kind of subjects. But if you got like an audience of just predominantly white people, and it sells out every for like a 3-week run, for the most part, could you, in one sense, you can absolutely say success because it's definitely done a sold out run. But if you're talking about these matters, that the one that we're talking to right now, is it speaking to the community that you really wanted to speak to? And if that's the case, then what are we talking about if we're talking about success? Do you see what I mean? Yeah. It's almost like in one sense, and then the question is, so you're now platforming this kind of trauma and this kind of stuff that we go through on a day-to-day basis for the white gaze, essentially. But you're still profiting off of that because you're making money. You just sold out 5 weeks of this. You've been commissioned and you just made your money off of this. So as Black creatives, what responsibility does that put on us when we're thinking about a type of work and that type of discussion, and to who it goes out to, and how our essential personal things are being shared and who receives it, and what are we calling for in that kind of audience? So like for me, all of those things come to mind when I think about a type of success. You know, would I rather like have sell out shows, or would I have a community of maybe 60 people in like a 300-seater and be like, but at least those 60 people within the community, they have got exactly what this work is, and for me that could be a success. So it's like it's really a thing of how you want to because you said metrics, and that for me those kind of things kind of speak to quantitative, qualitative, and how do we really want to measure this when we kind of discuss this.
Yeah, and it might be that success has to be redefined completely, right? Which I think is what we're getting at. Like the Black Panther Party, their idea of success was much different to the Gay Liberation Front, right? The 10-point plan, the impact was free school meals and safety and armed resistance, and the more people they brought into that and who believed in that, Black self-determination would be a metric of would be how they defined success for themselves, for the ultimate liberation. How would you complicate success?
So, by allowing success to be as messy and as chaotic as we are, would be the first thing.
As in, I'll take it where I can get it. Oh, projecting.
You know what, Joshua Diamotada. Anyway,
said mischief earlier. So.
I'll take it. I'll take the mischief too. So, okay, what I mean is, I don't think there's one way that we can define success. I think, for me, there is to what extent do we allow ourselves to move out of the neoliberal individual idea of a particular achievement framed within a capitalist framework, while at the same time not diminishing people's need to feel success in that way. So like if a man's like, actually I need X amount of money to live, I don't think it's my business to say you shouldn't be trying to get that. Like I think we need to resist the urge to police people trying to navigate precarity, by saying money matters to me, right? Because money does matter. So I think there is a thing around honoring people's relationship with their material realities and what people need. And I think there's success in the movement context, which again it needs to be multidimensional. So I see success as expanding our capacity to hold multiple truths. I see that as success. I see success as moments when we burn down Babylon, you know, like moments when particular things are, particular systems are broken or broken down. I see that as success. Like I'm obsessed with the Haitian Revolution. So I see success as how do we honor the revolutionary spirit and recognize moments that would have the gay liberation kind of agenda and the Black Panther Party kind of like in the same room going, yeah, this, and then, you know, like these people going, you know, like for me, success feels like a few years ago being at Black Pride and watching a whole community of us do it dancing to Candy, right? And everybody, like that's a moment that feels like that's Black joy injected into Black survival. And that feels like success. So I don't think it can be a single thing. And I think we have to be comfortable with the liminal. We have to be comfortable with the feeling. So like I know how I feel when something feels like a psychic win, for want of a better way of putting it. But there are also things like tangibly in our movement spaces, success. Did we manage to resource that space? Did we get money to do that thing? Did we get community to show up? So we do have to honor the need for those things as well, right? Again, it has to be multidimensional. It can't be singular.
There's a flexibility you're talking to as well,
Yeah.
that each of you is talking to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So take it where I can get it. Actually, it's not a bad way of thinking about it.
Well, because I had this vision in my mind of like a group of us all going in one direction and going, oh shit, no, actually, let's look back up. Like we changed our mind, right? Like I think of success as having, I think of success as also having space to change our minds. Yes. Right? To say, oh, I thought I wanted that, but actually I don't.
There's a reason why we're even in this space, I think. And I think that I think this could have been in any other space type thing. There's a reason why we're in this space, and I think even that is a success within itself, right? Yeah. Because there's so for the most part, there's different institutions that might want to sign up the poet, the playwright, that might want to like look forward to your book, like the big publishing houses as well. And the idea is that the mindset is that you need to be with these big boards or wherever it is, or you need to go to these things in order to validate yourself for the most part. But they also started at some point. And it's the idea that, you know, no, I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go here. I'm going to create a space that I want full autonomy of the community of people that are going to attend, and not allow that kind of control to be handed over to other people that are going to profit over essentially what is our experiences. And it's building that, and this is such a gorgeous space. Even walking in here, I could smell it, I can feel the warmth, and you can't necessarily get that with other institutions that might be throwing chunks of them out just to fill their statistics and to fill their kind of EDIs or whatever it is, because you know what that agenda is differently. Whereas with here, everything, all that autonomy is kept, and I think for that kind of success compared to whatever they might be offering, and just the actual empowerment to just be like, no. No. Oh, can I come to your thing? No, actually you can't, because no. I only want people in the space that are going to celebrate what it is that we're trying to do. Don't come in here and feel like you can replicate that with someone else and talk to someone else about it who might be kind of, to a certain degree, whitewashed and thinking, actually, oh, you're going to give me an opportunity, let me run at that. I think there's an actual autonomy in saying, I know my worth, I know my value, and this is what I want to do. And that alone, that individual autonomy, is what I wish we had in terms of being like, I don't need you, I can do this by myself type thing.
Vigorous nodding. Agreed. Happy to open this up. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to say this is such a sick conversation. I'm so happy I came. Thank you so much for just hosting such a beautiful, warm environment. So my question is, sorry, I've lost my chain of thought. Basically, I'm starting a collective, and it's all about reimagining a dream black world. And I'm also Sudani. And so I don't know if you guys know what's happening in Sudan, but yeah, it's crazy. And I'm part of a Sudani collective called Medaniya, and that's also about reimagining. So yeah, this is a bit heavy for me. Because also, I'm being completely honest, I just haven't really been speaking about this to people, in person. I've just been trying so hard to just stay positive, stay hopeful, because I know that's yeah, thank you, yeah. Yeah, it's also the first time I've been very just comfortable as well, just saying fuck it, I'm not actually okay as well. Even just this tone, I'm trying to catch myself, oh shit, okay, I'm not, composure, but fuck composure, but yeah, so the Sudani community, I feel right now the main problem is everyone's very hopeless, but I know through social justice movements, hope is the thing that we have to have. You've got to have faith, and so my question is, because I'm struggling with this with my community, how do you get them to, what's your strategy of reimagining and getting people to reimagine, and not the people who are gonna who kind of already know, because I do believe there's power also just in not having to constantly persuade people, and just focus on the people who get it. But I also do think that with movements, we've got to actually, even what you guys were saying with conflict, I think, yeah, how do you persuade people, basically?
I think there's something also worth teasing out here as well, that there is space for hopelessness too, right? That part of being in community means that when we need to step back and when we need to feel a little hopeless, that we're surrounded by people who feel hopeful, right? And there's space for us to waver in our faith. I think that's reasonable, right? And so that encouragement, I think, comes from community, right? If you feel hopeless today, that's okay. I feel hopeful and I got you, right? And so I think part of it's communicating and demonstrating to people that they're surrounded by people who, when shit hits the fan, they're supported. So I just wanted to say that too, that hopelessness can be okay too.
So I'm just going to send you some love, first of all. Just to say love, and what I'm going to offer is just one perspective. It's not the truth. I want to go back to what I said about Haitian Revolution. One of the reasons why I'm obsessed with the Haitian Revolution is because of the different strategies that were involved in that journey and the thing about time. People prayed. And when we talk about revolutionary kind of periods, with social media and with all of this stuff, there's so much pressure to be I'm taking a position, which is important, but sometimes it's stealth, and sometimes it's prayer. And sometimes it's falling down and being I feel hopeless, and I need another one to hold me right now. And sometimes it's allowing ourselves to share space to grieve, because one of the things that oppression does is it takes away our humanity, and it refuses us the permission to even be in our grief. So on one level, it takes black pain, for example, and it throws it out for public gaze, and at the same time, it shuts it down. It's hypervisibility, invisibility. You can't fucking win, right? And so for me, I'm we pray, we march, we protest, we scream, we organize. Like, I'm here for good juju, right? I'm like all of it. Like, we wash ourselves with the plants. We do what we need to do. Whatever mechanism pulls us together, for me, I'm here for like all of it. And so that's what I'd offer to you. Like, in the persuasion, sometimes it's not the words, sometimes it's how we be with a one. Sometimes it's how we hold a one in a moment of their grief. And when we go, you know what, it's not all right, but ultimately we're going to be all right. Ultimately, we're going to be all right. Because I actually believe we will have freedom. I really believe that. I really believe that. And I want to say, like, black life across this planet is not in a great place in so many ways. And then there are loads of places where there is black freedom. And I am the product of my ancestors' dreaming liberation. I would not be here if people didn't fight for my freedom over several hundred years, right? So I just also want to honor that, you know, and just send you beautiful love. You know, I said, we got you.
The artist Julie Nadi said, "If you guard me while I fantasize, I'll hold you while you rest." Right, so there's a part of that too. Yeah. If you guard me while I fantasize, I'll hold you while you rest. Yeah.
I don't know much everything, but just to add to that as well, I remember specifically when, especially in like post George Floyd, especially in 2021, when I was looking towards like a community of folks. I remember just grouping up with some of my friends and we just go on walks. And it would be the most random stuff sometimes in terms of just people watching. Like, we'll see the most funniest thing. But what happened within that was we were together as a collective. We didn't really have money for like big meals or whatever it is, so we just went to somewhere that we can get a quick bite. But what that done was it got bigger and bigger. And then it got to a point that we started to kind of put some money in the pot. So we kind of just shared our tapas from time to time. But while we were there talking about either food or whatever, we also broke into discussions about what was going on, because we were sharing essentially what that issue was. And we realized very soon that in isolation, we are actually not coping at all. But there's something about us being together, even for the silliest reason, that we're sharing that, and we know that you're feeling this and you're feeling this. So there was a physicality that was involved in that situation. So what that might look like for you, I'm not sure. But as an offer, however small the collective or however big the collective, literally just saying, do you know what, here's a park, let's just kind of chill for a bit and see what's going on where we are, even if it's like it's a bit cold at the moment. But whatever might kind of give some space. It can be a cinema day or something. It can go to watch a film in someone's house. But it's less about the film. It's more about all people being in a space. And the film is just a vice. Because in between that, you're still going to have popcorn and some snacks and whatever it is, and you're still going to be together, and conversations will work. But there's something about that togetherness that goes a very long way. Do you see what I mean? So I don't know if it's something that you're practicing currently. Yeah. And do you know what it is as well? If it's anything like my boys, they'll never make a move. So in some way, shape or form, they need a leader to kick it into gear. And not everybody wants that kind of responsibility, which goes to that very first thing of the heart making a move, because sometimes when you're kind of leading in a certain decision, all that responsibility and accountability falls on you, especially when other people are not pulling the weight. But if this is something that's in your heart that you want to do, it's something that you're also going to go with, and folks are going to follow in knowing what it is that you're trying to do as well. Yeah, it's part of that role of responsibility thing as well. And sometimes you're going to cuss, but you're going to think to what it's actually doing, and there's a different feeling that you're going to get from that, hopefully, you know. But
Yeah, 100, and equally sending you love as well. Yeah, just echoing everything that's already been said, and I feel like all I can add is I just think there's a lot of power in holding your own flame of hope, but equally holding your own flame of despair, like just the authenticity of whatever state you're in, because I feel like we can't always convince people. All we can do is hold our own energy and be deeply true to ourselves, and the ones that are meant to be with us will come along the journey with us. Do you know what I mean? And the other thing I wanted to add was in terms of spirituality as well, like kind of similar to what Marai said, like how I hold my flame of hope is my spiritual practice. And I feel like it's such a travesty that us as black folk especially, and people of color in general, like have been so severed from our ways of knowing, our ways of being, our ways of experiencing the world, like prior to colonization. And there has been such a healing process of understanding what my ancestors believed, like spiritually, but then also almost like kind of connecting with all forms of spirituality. Like I do yoga most days. Like there's so many things out there that can connect you with source, which is essentially connecting with yourself, innit? And I truly believe that the only reason that I believe that another world is possible is because it's inscribed on my soul. And so as I get closer to that soul, I get closer to that world, innit?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to say I'm really getting a lot from this, so thank you so much. And it was about something that, well, this is more of a kind of statement of my own experience rather than like ends with a question mark, but something that you said, Yomi, about one of your teachers, and she wears the bangles like every time there's a kind of an achievement. And that's a kind of her own sense of, pleasure and self-love in a frame of, what the erotic might be. And something that I'm really trying to do with myself recently is, yes, celebrate the wins, but I'm trying to remind myself and practice that even when the wins don't come, I'm still like worthy of the bangle. Do you know what I mean? Like I can still have the bangle, because, okay, so I'm a freelancer, I'm self-employed, and a few months ago I was like, you know what, I think I need to get like a part-time job where I know every month I'm gonna be paid, and that's the situation. And I've been looking for this job for like months now, and there's been a lot of disappointment and a lot of kind of like it's gotten close. And a couple of months ago, I made this list of like, these are the things that I'm going to do for myself when I get the job. And then recently I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to do some of these things before the job comes, because I'm still worthy of these things before the job comes, And there's a certain flow of, practicing that connection to my own pleasure, practicing that self-care, practicing that worth, even when it's not being reflected from the outside world of like, yes, you are worthy of this. And it's not against what you're saying, because I feel that too, but it's a yes and like that. I still,
Listen. Even if I didn't get that job that I was going for, or like the audition that I was going for, and it didn't happen, even if I didn't get it, I'm going to be bummed. Yes, I'm going to be so annoyed. But guess what? Did I not write a shit hot CV situation? Did I not kind of like, was that application banging? Like it wasn't the application that was there 2 years ago, whether it is. This is fire. And the thing is, I probably didn't get it because the climate is what the climate is. Politic is gonna politic. So it doesn't even have anything to necessarily do with me. It might just be a different kind of politic that I don't understand, but I do understand because now I know how this world works. But my craft, in terms of what I've done so far, I can celebrate the idea of writing this application, and I can take myself out because I know that this is a banging application form that I done. And even though I didn't get, and plus I'd done this job interview, I looked fly. Do you know what I mean? I looked fly. Do you know the end of the question when they were like, do you have any questions for us? I gave a banging question that made them think twice about the whole situation. And I walked out of there and I'm just like, yeah. So I feel like there were things where I wouldn't consider it's almost like when you get the end result, you think, oh, I failed. But actually, that one part of it didn't work out. But the lead up to it you absolutely smashed it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be shortlisted for this, or you wouldn't be considered for that. And I think those things are worthy of high value and high celebration. Do you see what I mean? And we should normalize that, even though I know that it can be a shitty feeling if you didn't get the end result. We should kind of consider what it took to get there in the first place, type thing.
Two offerings. Usualize instead of normalize.
Oh,
That's a language
usualize.
offering. Usualize. Who wants to be normal? You want to usualize things. And you've made me think of, sorry, people who know me are going to beat me up for saying this again, but Toni Morrison said, the grandeur of life is in the attempt. Right? So making those, recognizing ourselves as we attempt is just as important as the actual wins. Yes, and then we have to wrap up.
Something brief to add to that, yeah. I don't actually reward myself for anything. And stay with me, yeah. Because
I'm out of here, Mel.
it's just
no treats.
It's just something that do you know what? Yeah, it's because I don't tie me getting anything to anything that I've done. Do you know what I mean? So like the other day, I was like, do you know what? I don't like the winter. Do you know what? I've got some money saved. Let me go to Bali for a month. So I didn't do anything. Do you know what I mean? And like whenever I gift myself something, it's never on the basis of I've done something. I just wanted to completely untangle those things. I give myself a lot of things. Listen, I give myself, but it's never on the basis of I've attempted or I've achieved. It's just is. Do you know what I mean? We all deserve deeply.
Well, I'm not there yet. I need a carrot. But it's a journey. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for sharing this space with us and for your energy and just holding us as we've attempted this conversation about the Black radical imagination. And for those of you watching, breaking the fourth wall, we see you. We love you. And thank you for being here as well and for taking time out of your evenings or wherever you are to be part of this with us. And thank you to our BSL interpreters as well.